it was fun when I was listening to you and watching you do the interviews. It was just fun, like in some ways, like reliving some of Silicon Valley history.
Right.
You know?
Which interviews? Just like on YouTube or something?
Yeah, I mean there was one on Spotify that was the Village Global one.
Okay.
Which was mostly Q&A.
Right.
So it was like very ad hoc.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was cool. Like that was just like I appreciated that was like your brain, like the CPU was like currently running, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like just kind of answering.
I tend to like do that. I like that better. I get bored with my own material.
What are you doing now since Zynga?
I'm kind of back to tinkering like I was doing before Zynga. Like I have a couple of teams and I call it rubbing sticks together. You know, I mean, it's almost embarrassing. It's like we're literally playing with what can we do now with HTML-based interactive experiences, games. How can we take advantage of the new browser GPU to do higher fidelity, kind of the way I did with Flash? And how can we integrate AI, social, real world things? So I'd say I've been chasing this dragon since before Zynga, and I call it all .earth, this whole vision. I talk about it publicly because like my best ideas are like hiding in plain sight. And this vision to me is like, how do we get to a place where we're living life at the speed of play? And I'm writing a book called Life at the Speed of Play. I'm not promoting it yet, even though I guess we're talking about it. And my hypothesis is that only Elon lives life at the speed of play, but eventually we all will. So Elon can tweet, there should be a boring company because I hate this traffic in LA. And 3 or 4 months later, he's raised a few $1 billion and there is a company trying to tunnel under. And we're all going to have some experience like that in the future where it's almost like that now where you can type in a prompt and you see some software be created. But imagine that you type in a prompt and it's not just to a machine that's doing software, but it's actually connecting to lots of other people and services. Or you see an experience you like and you right click on it the way we used to with HTML view source, and you do edit, copy, paste, and I'm going to take that store and that cash register and I'm going to use it for some other purpose. It's this, people call it no code, you know, people think about that in the game sense, but I'm interested in like, how do we build more cool shit sense?
So let's take the Elon example of like a tunnel. What's your version of that on the, using the right click analogy?
Okay, well, let me give you the first, which is just the text prompt, and I'll have to think through in real time the right click analogy. I haven't prepared that material. The first is you might literally do the equivalent of tweeting out, God, I'm frustrated. Someone literally Sunday night for the second time stole my Uber Eats. And I have it on security footage. It's actually the drivers. There's this weird phenomena, and I've emailed Dara about this. There's a subreddit thread on this that I'm on a tangent, sorry.
No,
but
God.
there are these independent drivers, and apparently if they call you a few times and you don't come to the door, they're somehow allowed to like leave with your food and it counts as a canceled order or something. I don't know. If you go in, I can show you the screenshot that I sent to Dara in their own customer support thread. It says this. I check leave it at the door, not take it home with you. And now for the second time that happened. I wonder if there's a future state where I could tweet out, God, I'd love to start a better high-end competitor to Uber Eats or high-end competitor to Uber that is what I call a whale product that just caters to the high end of the market where people are willing to pay more for guaranteed delivery or pay more to make sure you have a professional Uber car driver. Could I tweet that out and have that magically connect me with the right people? Right now, we're automating steps. Like right now, I researched, this is random, but I researched could I start an olive oil company or buy one as a family business? Because we're really into olive oil. And I thought maybe maybe that's a cool macro. I know I'm on more tangents now.
There's no agenda.
But so GPT, I really kept prompting it, and I was like, no, that's not good enough. I want you to be my research analyst, and I want you to analyze the market, come back, tell me who are the major players, what is their market share, who owns them, give me contact information. And it did it after like 3 or 4 prompts. So we're automating a bunch of steps right now that is like the research and planning side of it. And I just wonder are we going to get to a next step of automation that's actually human connection automation, marketplaces, that's not just doing that, but it's actually connecting me to people who are experts in that market, or are the next, who are the people whether it's bankers or maybe it's someone, an entrepreneur who's in the olive oil business who's actually interested. Like they could hear this podcast and somebody who has a family olive oil business might be like, yeah, I'd be happy to have Pincus as a partner.
Right. Or in your case, like, hey, well, can you reach out to the, not maybe if there's a top 50 list of olive oil producers, exclude the top 30 and reach out to the top 20 and see if they're willing to sell. And if they are, like, please connect me with a banker that's also willing to like give me a loan. Yeah. Like you're saying, close the loop all the way.
I'm saying imagine that what this network does for us is close the loop on the marketplace side. And I'll give you the right click example. That one was a little scattered. This is the first time I tried that one. The right click example is, and I start with games, but imagine my daughters are 14 years old, they play Roblox, and imagine that they're in a game like Adopt Me, that's like a life simulation game, and they run across a store, and that store is selling real shit. It's selling real virtual shit and real analog shit. So it's selling things you can use in Roblox, outfits or things for your avatars. Might be selling bikes and cars you can use in that game, but it's a real store and they can use Robux or whatever. Now imagine that store is also selling you Mad Happy sweatshirts or curated stuff that person, and it's a real store with a real cash register hooked up to Stripe, and it has real customer support. That customer support is a woman, at-home mother in India who just made a customer support service, attached it. She may or may not have attached it to this virtual cash register. And now my daughter can right click on the cash register or the whole store, edit, copy, paste. And she has a brand she's trying to make called Comfy Fancy, of comfy fancy sweatshirts, kind of like Mad Happy for girls, young girls. And now she could be like, this is the Comfy Fancy store, and we're going to sell virtual Comfy Fancy stuff and real Comfy Fancy stuff. But she doesn't even know. It has a real cash register. She has to hook up maybe her own account. But it came with this woman doing customer support and charging some percentage of sales for it. And she could look in the detail and see she got all that or just skip it. But kind of like in 1995, I started learning HTML by clicking view source, and then I would change the text and other things and make my own web page. I don't know how to code. And I see somehow for me, I see that being the next thing that we get to. That right now it might be that you view the prompt and you're like, oh, that's a great prompt, I'm going to reuse that. But I think there's kind of getting back to Web 2.0 of interlinking API services. But what happens when we make it incredibly easy for anybody to turn themselves, their idea, their service into an API, and now we have these roving agents that are either centralized or decentralized that are making all these connections for us. And in a weird way, it gets back to when Reid Hoffman and I started thinking about both Web 2.0 and the people web. We thought it all boiled down to leads and lead generation. That's what Craigslist is. And I'm taking you on this whole random walk.
Please.
But this is what goes on in my head. I'm trying to connect the dots on all this, and I haven't yet. But I think about this, the way the web has worked for the last 25 years has been this kind of quiet, passive, decentralized to centralized relationship that you put something out, you hope that Google picks it up, or some search engine, today it's only Google, and then you hope to be found, and you try to optimize being found, and you might even buy an ad around a search word. But it's still there is not mutual intent on all sides. Like if I'm trying to connect with you, or I'm trying to connect with that olive oil dude who has like the little family business, wants to partner with me to take it to the next level, there's no opportunity for mutual intent for both of us. We have to like, I don't know how we find each other. Craigslist, like random encounters, like bankers. And this is another piece of the puzzle that I'm going to add that may or may not make sense. It also all goes back to Napster. So for me, my internet experience changed the first time I tried Napster. And Sean Parker, who was working for me when he was 16, as a summer job, went and started it and emailed me and said, we have this thing Napster and we need money, $100,000 to turn on more servers because all of our servers are full the minute we turn them on. And when you get that email, you just send a check, because that's what you want to hear. Like the dogs aren't just eating the dog food. They're waiting for a new bowl and they're going to eat that. So I did that. But when I first tried Napster, I was like, oh, we don't need all these middlemen and databases. We can actually have our computers talk to each other and just type in what we want, and the network through peer-to-peer can solve it for us. And I think that was this matrix moment that I thought would lead. I thought with social networking, we would take that to the next level of this people web and lead gen just happening, and it didn't, or it still hasn't. So anyway, .Earth and Life at the Speed of Play is bigger than a company. I guess it's like my metaverse vision. And the metaverse for me has nothing to do with VR and goggles. It could happen there, but it's more that we're blurring the lines between the analog and the digital, the online and offline world, and automating the connections.
When you said, when you described rubbing sticks together right now, you said it's somewhat embarrassing. Why did you describe it that way?
Because it's, it was embarrassing to me when I was 40 and 41 and I was doing it. Like
when? Before Zynga?
Yeah, just before Zynga, like 2006 to 2007. It's embarrassing as a founder who has successes,
Because you've sold a couple companies before that, you're saying?
Yeah, my first company, I got lucky, got acquired after 7 months. My second company went public. And my third company, Tribe, was one of the first social networks and failed. But by that point in 2006 and 2007, I was like considered like a fundable, serious entrepreneur, not like first time. But when people were like, what are you doing? All my friends and peers were like partners in venture capital funds, or they had significant companies. And I was like, well, I'm working with a little team and we're just trying stuff and nothing's working. Like, not a good answer. It's like, no one wants to talk to you at the party or event. They're like, oh, and it's kind of stepping in mud. And it's honest, and I'm always wanting to just give the honest, authentic answer, but it's not a satisfying answer for me or the person I'm talking to. And so I call it rubbing sticks together. It is, because I'm back to like, there's no scale, no leverage. I'm literally just working with a few engineers and we're trying to figure things out. And we lack, it's like, it's like you go from this gigantic scale like I had with Zynga and teams around the world and thousands of employees and capital. And now it's like, you're managing 2 PMs and, 5 engineers, and you're trying to build stuff really slowly or quickly.
Yeah. And when you were at Zynga, were you convinced that this was your forever job? I thought
it was, yeah. And I wanted it to be. And one of the pieces of advice I try to give to founders is try to set your real intention long before you start the company. Otherwise, what happened to me before Zynga was, I like to say that, if you don't know your goal, you're going to suffer death by 1,000 compromises. And that's so much of the founding entrepreneurial experience is that it's, you're making compromises to get that CTO or to get that VC. And the biggest compromise usually is around your first investor, because you're so often struggling to get that validation and that investor. And then when someone wants to come in, you're so excited that you're kind of like almost ready to accept anything. And the thing you'll almost always accept is they just give you whoever they want on your board. But I'm like, wait, that's going to really matter down the road. Like that actually can make a big difference, big negative difference, and sometimes a big positive difference. So before I started Zynga, I literally said, I want to build a house this time I want to live in. And I literally bought a building. It made no sense financially. I spent $3 million all in to buy and rehab this old factory and before I even had an idea. And I put a restaurant kitchen in it. And I was like, I want to live better than the VCs. And because I went to Kleiner and it was like on Sand Hill Road, it was always this like quiet, refined, I imagine they had catered food. I hired 18 part-time chefs from the Culinary Academy across the street from us, and I was eating better than Kleiner. So I was like, oh, you're eating out of tin foil, you're out of to-go things. And I had someone just make me breakfast, so I achieved that. But I said, I want to build a house I want to live in, and I want to be super intentional. Of course, you have to have a real company and business and stuff. But I did think of that ahead of time. And so I said to founding team members, investors, employees, I was like, we're going to go all the way. We're going to build an independent company or nothing. And you need to be on that ride. And it made a big difference. And a lot of investors turned me down because of that. In fact, I got to the point around our second round of financing, what I think maybe people call that Series A now. I don't understand why, but you'd think A would be your first. But the second round of financing, I said, let me tell you the top 10 reasons why you're not going to want to invest in Zynga. And if you still want to talk, we'll talk. And 95% of investors said, thank you for saving me time. I don't want to invest. And it was a little bit of chip on my shoulder. And I said, I'm going to keep control because I need to protect investors from themselves. Because as a founder, now it's more accepted, but this was not super accepted in 06 and 07. But as a founder, if I am committed to going the distance against our vision and mission, and there's just a great podcast I listened to with Peter Thiel, and he was talking about the moment when Zuck turned down the Yahoo offer and didn't even want to have a board conversation about it. That's a founder. You need a founder in that moment. And there's lots of times early on, before a company has found its product market fit and its way to scale, that you have moments you might have to pivot hard. And if you also have to convince your board, it just 10x's the job. And it's like it feels like you're going to war, and you've got to know everyone's with you, and we're like, hey, it's not safe in this foxhole anymore. Sorry to use war analogy, but we got to run to the next one, and a lot of us might be killed, but this one's not safe. It's going to blow up, if we stay here. And if your board is second guessing you or saying no, you're kind of screwed.
Wait, you bought and spent millions of dollars on a warehouse before the idea of Zynga had even come to fruition?
Yeah, it really, really didn't make any sense. I spent $2 million to buy this building and $1 million to rehab it, and I just
thought, your own money.
Yeah, my own money, and then I put up $350,000 in working capital to fund Zynga's efforts until we actually became cash flow positive, which was a month after we launched our first game, luckily. But then we went and raised $5 million. So we're cash flow positive. I just put up $3 million for the building, no equity. And then I go and raise $5 million. Looking back, I'm like, well, maybe I should have, put the $3 million in the company instead of into a building, which is not appreciated, nearly as much as Zynga did. So yeah, it didn't make any sense. And
so so I still can't believe that. And so, sorry, your note about this idea of embarrassment around rubbing sticks, and connecting the dots to what you were just saying, is what you're saying, hey, I want to be able to live the lifestyle that people, my peer set was living, but I still want to tackle the ambition that I wanted to go tackle.
Yes, but in a different way that I think you're saying. it definitely related to work ethic and that part of lifestyle, but it's more, it gets more to like, what is your ambition? And my ambition was to be a great product maker, to make what John Doerr gave me this gift that he gave me the name for what I had been doing all along. And he said, Mark, you want to build an internet treasure. One of these, I don't know if you've ever heard him say that, but one of these services we can't remember life before or imagine life without. That was my ambition. And I was like, I thought I was going to do that in the beginning. I missed Web 1.0. And that's what my ambition was. And these other paths, like, I don't know if I could have been a partner in a venture fund, but being an investor wasn't going to get there. And buying a company or doing all these other things that might get you scale or leverage weren't going to put me on a path to building that. And the only way that I could see was this rubbing sticks together and trying to tinker and connect the dots to the next product. And you're in what I call in my book, the abyss. And so many founders know this. And when you have a clear career as a VC, you're actually never in this abyss. You may have been before this, but this abyss is this scary place. You don't have any structure left at all. It doesn't really matter if you get out of bed in the morning. There's nobody other than maybe your kids or your dog depending on you in this world. And it's not clear if you're ever going to come out of this abyss. Like, you don't have a job or a thing that you're supposed to go do on Monday. And it's so amorphous. You just don't know if it'll ever end. You're like, was this my best days behind me and I'm never going to create something again? And do you feel that way now? Yeah, I'm in I'm in that abyss.
You feel like that?
Oh yeah.
Like, do you ask yourself, like, am I going to be remembered for Zynga? Like, is that?
It's like, less. I'm not very sentimental, and so for me, it's less like.
Meaning, is that going to be the biggest internet treasure that I've ever created?
Well, it's not even internet treasure. Like, I think Zynga created some forever games. I mean, like Words with Friends, but by my definition of internet treasure, I really kind of on a metrics basis, I'll go to day 365 retention. Like, I think it's got to be part of people's digital life stack. It's got to be something. I think it's got to have. You could debate it, but a minimum of 10% day 365 retention, but more like 30%. Like, I look today at like Snapchat, which I love as an investor, or LinkedIn. I mean, with day 365 retention of 30%, you're part of people's digital life stack. Not everybody, but a billion people or something. And so for me, the question is, will I still have that opportunity to create an important forever product in people's lives? And I want to, and I've come close to it. And I want to create that for the joy of creating that and feeling like I put that in the world. It's more that to me than like, what is my legacy? And it's more just what's fucking fun. Like, what makes me love.
Are you having fun right now?
I'm having fun, but not as much fun as I had when I was in like just the heat of building Zynga, of meeting with game teams every day and testing and iterating and building and having this feedback loop that's so addictive, of coming up with what we call bold beats and new ideas, seeing them get into the product, and then seeing them when they work, really work. And I can't say enough that it's the social aspect, that the key to what we were trying to do with social gaming was, we didn't always get there, but was experiences that would improve people's relationships. And I just taught a class at Stanford, and there were two kids in the back who came up to me afterwards and they said, we were those people. We in high school started flirting on Words with Friends, and now we're engaged. And that's like the best thing you can ever hear as a product maker.
I've heard you say that you're more respected than liked in the gaming industry. Can you explain that?
Yeah, although it may even sound arrogant to say I'm respected, but definitely right on the.
I can say you're definitely respected.
All right, but I definitely feel confident on the fairly low like side. I don't get a lot of likes.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, I think it's reduced the energy around it a bit because so much of what we did at Zynga is now common practice, both in consumer internet and in gaming. But we were not just disruptive to the gaming industry. We were disruptive to there's a whole school of thinking around products in Silicon Valley that there's a question of how much of this is a craft and an art and how much is a science. And we came at this from, hey, it's at least 50% science, and we probably over-indexed on the science versus the instincts and the art and the crafting. The game industry was extreme on this being about art and crafting. So I have these two philosophies that maybe you heard me talk about that are in my book. As a founder, and as I look back, my pattern recognition on what we're all doing fits into these two frameworks. And one is that we have these winning instincts, these human instincts that if you're a decent founder, they're always right. But we layer on top these losing ideas. And the point is, like, I've given the example that I had the instinct and idea that we should be able to order a taxi through our phone in 2003. And I registered smstaxi.com, and I could say, I had that idea for Uber. I didn't. I had this instinct. This is stupid. If you're at the theater and it's raining, or, you ought to be able to, there ought to be a better way than just calling, even before we had smartphones. But the world was not ready for it yet. And I'm a surfer, and I know we can't make waves. We can only paddle in front of waves. And so this instinct part is, do you have an instinct that relates to a real wave? That's something that is a human need, something that is changing because of technology. The way we could live could be so much better. That's to me like an instinct vein. Napster gave me an instinct vein. Going to Burning Man and other things made me feel this instinct around the cocktail party, which we can come back to, that relates so much to, I think, what's going on in social networking. But then we have ideas on top. And the point is, your instincts are probably right 95% of the time, and your ideas are probably right at best 25% of the time. And what do you do with that? So with Tribe.net, I pursued one losing idea and 3 winning instincts. And I stoically went down with the ship. I refused to try 10 other ideas against these instincts. That these Tribe, people loved community. That ultimately became Reddit. Listings. LinkedIn got listings right. Consumer social networking, obviously Facebook and Instagram and others got that right. And I'm not saying I would have succeeded at those, but I know I could have had a better shot if I didn't just stick to one failing product with Tribe. And it's such an important point, and it was an important point leading into Zynga, because if you can isolate these instincts and write them down and look for feedback loops that tell your instinct is right, but then not be attached to any idea variant that you're doing, you can say, I really need to have a lot of shots on goal. I need 4 or 5 or 10 ideas I try, and I can't afford to build a minimum viable product. It's terrible I keep saying, and in my book, if it ever comes out, but I think MVP served us in the last 20 years and won't serve you in the next 20 years. We don't have time to build an MVP. You don't have time to be wrong. You can't wait that long, 3 months, to build a minimum viable product, put it out, and be wrong. You need to get to a minimum viable idea state, and you need to find true signal around that idea state that it's right or wrong, and move on much, much, much faster. The world's moving too quickly. So this one point is foundational for me, is winning instincts, losing ideas. And then the way I prosecute product management on top of that, or thinking about new products, is with a framework that I call proven better new. That you can deconstruct any product experience and say, what is it about that experience that you could take Duolingo and say, okay, they did a brilliant job of combining a language learning system with fun gamification and a freemium model. Could you do proven better new and recreate that experience so somebody has the same experience? You can for sure do it in games, but then can you find something to be better that 9 or 10 out of 10 people say fuck yes. With Zynga Poker, proven was we didn't change the rules of poker. We didn't change the 9 seats, what the table looked like. Better was no download. It was just Flash because it was a free game. We didn't have to have a JavaScript download on your computer, which felt creepy. New was pictures of real people. I didn't know if that was going to work, but that was proven better new. I could have quickly iterated on other ideas if that didn't work. Proven better new, taking this framework, I'm deeply committed to it. People who came out of Zynga are committed to it. This is a very long-winded, many paragraph answer to your question, about if I'm liked or respected in the game industry. That proven better new concept is kind of what the game industry is mostly doing today, but I don't think anyone will talk about it or admit it. And we saw the companies that are revered, that are respected and loved, like Supercell. Ilka, who I deeply respect, is a master of proven better new. What he did was he took Farmville 2, our web game, which was massively successful, and he built a perfect proven better new of that for mobile. And it was actually nothing new. I mean, it was basically, the new was it's on now available and working on mobile. If you looked at the game side by side, he had the same white mailbox, the same half driveway, house with a white picket fence. Like, they perfectly copied our game, legally copied our game, but then they made it better for mobile. I mean, it was on mobile, had shorter times on your crops. It was fun to touch, and the game crushed it and crushed us. I deeply respected what he did, but because of the mystique around Supercell and that they came from the game industry and they're deeply respected as game designers, nobody minded, that they did that. But we were the first to do it. We didn't try to hide it. The game industry did not like it.
Can I share an observation with you? And feel free to agree or disagree with me. But you seemingly still have a chip on your shoulder. And that is, I would say, my pattern recognition. So that's surprising because you, even before your giant hit Zynga, you were already buying cash $2-3 million buildings. Like you've already, that was even before, Zynga became one of the preeminent Web 2.0 tech companies. And, I don't know how to describe it, but I still feel like you have this chip on your shoulder. In fact, I think the reason you're playing with sticks right now is because of this chip. Otherwise, I'm not sure you would.
Well, the chip on the shoulder.
Do you agree or no?
No, I half agree. It's a real thing for a lot of founders. Parker, who just created Parker, it's
Rippling.
Yeah. Right, big chip on his shoulder. I'm not that level. When I started Zynga, I did have a chip on my shoulder about it's kind of it's an old trope now in the Valley of the founder that feels like they were mistreated by VCs and now they're gonna show everyone or whatever. I had that in the beginning, and then I had the best VCs. I mean, I had Bing Gordon and John Doerr and Fred Wilson and Brad Feld. I had literally Brad Feld hugged me when I walked into my board meetings, and so I have no complaints, no chip on my shoulder about the Zynga experience, about the VCs, the investors, the board. They were just...
Thankfully, Kleiner got that right.
They really did, yeah. And thankfully for me, because Bing and John Doerr were massively game-changing, positive. And even though I had control, we agreed 100% unanimously on every single decision. So I didn't need it, theoretically. But so the question, am I motivated today by a chip on my shoulder? I'd put it at 15%, 20%, not 80%. Like, I have a little bit of chip on my shoulder about, does the game industry, give me respect or treat me differently than Ilka or whoever. But, I was never invited to speak at GDC, Game Developers Conference, and I'm kind of okay with that. I think it's kind of funny.
You weren't?
No.
That's like Elon not getting invited to the...
to the White House, yeah.
For the electric vehicle...
Right.
Like for the electric car symposium or whatever.
Right. He has a little chip on his shoulder, or a big chip. But I don't think the chip on his shoulder drives him either. I don't think that's enough. I think about what makes me happy and satisfied, and I am happy, and I have amazing life on so many fronts, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not using enough of my talents and skill set against what I think I'm really good at. And I'm writing a book and teaching, but I want to be putting my hands on products and building cool new experiences. I want to try to create magic. And that's not a chip on my shoulder. That's just...
I think that's well said. Yeah. I think that's well said. When Zynga first got going, you had mentioned it took like a month from it starting to the first game really working?
From the game launching. So I was building Zynga Poker on and off throughout 2007. And then Facebook launched their marketplace and open API in May. And July 1, I turned on our poker game.
Which was the first game?
That was the first game.
And had you invested in Facebook already?
Yeah, I invested. Luckily, the one good thing that came out of Tribe failing and Sean Parker working for me was in 2004, he brought Zuck into my office at Tribe, and Zuck, really, really looked, if you see pictures or you met him then, like a kid. And Sean opened up Facebook, which it was only available to college kids. And when I saw it, and I saw the level of trust, and I saw the kind of cocktail party that was going on there, and college kids sharing mobile phone numbers and access to the music files in their computers, which they had this thing called Wirehog, I was like, oh my God, like they have nailed it, and they're doing everything that I've been wanting to do and I'm failing against. And so I had this duality that I'm like, God, I'm killing myself trying to do Tribe.
Like it was kind of competitive to Tribe?
Well, not even. It was so far ahead of Tribe in getting it right that it wasn't even competitive. We were just so out of place, out of position. We got trust wrong.
Yeah.
And then when Sean said, yeah, we're putting together this little round for $500K, and Peter Thiel is doing most of it, but he said he could get me in for $38K and add me. I was like, thank you. Like I was like, this could be worth $100 million one day. I'm investing in a $5 million valuation. And I was like, this is an obvious 20x. So I saw it. I saw that it could be worth $100 million, not necessarily $1 trillion. But yeah, so I was so lucky to invest.
But that was also an early insight for you on Zynga.
Well, it wasn't. Zynga I started in 2003, so I'd been kind of hitting my head against a wall. First thinking I was really getting it, and then seeing that I wasn't, for maybe almost a year and a half by the time the fall of 2004 when I saw them and MySpace.
Zynga you started in 2003.
No, sorry.
Tribe.
Yeah.
Tribe you started in 2003.
Tribe.net.
Yeah. But I'm saying when the Facebook investment happened for you, that was an early number one that felt like the chapter was closing on Tribe in some way for you. And,
not yet.
And maybe another door was opening towards Zynga.
Maybe that is what happened then, looking back, but that's not where I was in that moment. I was still really trying to figure out how to make Tribe work in fall of 2004, and almost to a fault. Here's Facebook. Granted, they were only in 6 schools.
Sure.
And what they said to me is, we are raising some money to go to more schools. It sounded like the Napster thing, and more servers. We have a wait list of schools asking us. And basically Sean said we launch a school 1 week and we get 20%. And then the next week we get the other 80%. And I was like, shit, fuck, they really, I didn't know they'd open it up to the world. I was like, well, they've nailed trust for schools. That's huge. And it was becoming really obvious how wrong I got trust on Tribe. So I was still, though, trying every possible way to make Tribe work, except building whole new products on it. And I just think we get so narrowly focused and internally focused on our own product and wanting to make, and I like to say also, a B+ can be the enemy of an A. And Tribe was a B+. It was good enough to get funding and team and a bunch of users, but it wasn't an A. So it's good enough and you get enough signal back to keep going, but never an A. So it's actually the worst possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you started, and then how long from when Tribe closed the doors to when Zynga Poker launched?
Well, take you through the journey. I think Mayfield, in order to, the board, I had these big corporations on my board, like Knight Ridder and the Washington Post, and really great people, but they were definitely like square, pegs in round holes, and just, it was total mismatch. And it was because I thought the newspaper companies would partner with us to promote us to compete with Craigslist. It never happened. But so then they got me a CEO coach because they said, we think you need to learn how to be a better CEO. So I said, okay. And then in order to fund another round, they said, we need a new professional CEO. And we hired this guy who was like a born again Christian who spent a lot of time like marking what was mature content. And we had a lot of mature content on Tribe. But he didn't know anything about making, entrepreneuring and making products. But so that kept going on. I backed out by like 05, 06. And then I was in this abyss in 06 and I had lunch with my friend Matt Acco, and he was like, you need to do something, Mark. You can't just wander. And I'm like, you're right. And I said, maybe I'll buy CNET, because I thought I'll have this captive audience of 70 million users and I can test all my ideas and bring out consumer ideas there. So I worked with all these bankers and private equity guys, went to New York. I spent all this time. It was really, really boring. And then during that time, Matt Kohler, I saw him, said, hey, we're going to open up an API to Facebook. We have 70 million MAUs. I was like, 70 million. One is like $3 or $4 billion buyout, or two something. The other one's free. Like I could just put apps on them and, test all my ideas quickly. And it's also worth remembering, it's kind of starting, it feels a little bit similar today, but in 05, 06, if you had a new idea for a consumer thing, you had to build everything, like the profiles, the login, like all the plumbing and distribution. And so it was a huge stack of what you had to do. And the real amazing thing about Facebook and all the social networks opening up was you could just build your app and skip all the rest and test it, in weeks. And so I found my way out of the abyss, not through trying to buy CNET, but actually through, seeing, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to test these consumer ideas. I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And then seeing Facebook opened up, at least gave me the beginnings of the path. I didn't know what it would lead to, but at least I got a place to tinker.
Wow. And then how long from that point so then what?
And I'll say that was an embarrassing time, 07. For me, I was 41, and people, if I'd run into you then and you're like, I don't know how old you would have been then, but if I'd run into,
like, what are you doing right now?
What are you up to?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a poker game. Like, what are you doing? Well, I had an enterprise software company that went public, and I started one of the first social networks. Now what are you doing? Well, I have a poker game that I've put out on Facebook, and, we're up to, 20, 30,000 users, and I'm really excited about it. And what is everyone else doing? There's much bigger apps than you that are like, sending drinks to people, and, it was like super pokes, and it was silly things that you're building for kids. It was not serious and Silicon Valley, it's pretty much this way now, but it was even more so then, was very much like, what are you doing that is going to make humanity better? And I don't think that's a wrong filter, especially in like the Bay Area, but it's hard to argue, well, I'm making a poker game on Facebook that's social, and here's how it's not hard tech, it's not important tech, and it's not obviously going to make the world a better place. So you and it's silly. So there's like nothing very impressive about that at that point. So you did feel embarrassed. No, I think it's funny. I mean, I thought it was funny then, and I luckily I just kind of am amused by the whole thing. So I don't hide it. People are like, what are you up to? Lots of times I'm like, I'm in this dark abyss and I'm lost. And they're like, oh, like I didn't really want that much information. I just wanted to hear you're in a job, your kids are happy. I'm not good at small talk. I don't like small talk.
Do you, I don't like small talk either, for what it's worth. I can't do it.
That's why I enjoy like a podcast. I mean, I don't know the idea of sharing this with the world, but yeah, I'd rather talk about I'd rather talk about deeper things, or are you happy? What's the meaning of happiness? Like that's more interesting to me than I'm just not good at like, how are your kids?
Do you feel misunderstood in that sense because you just abdicate from many social norms?
Yeah. Reed told me a while ago, he's like, Reed Hoffman. Yeah. Sorry. I refer to him and Bing, like they're in my head. But Reed said to me a while ago, you should think about like more consciously about what is your brand and what is your story, because the media is going to write the easy story. And I've never listened to that. I wish I had on some level, but I try to just be authentic, and my authentic self is more nuanced. And I think I get misunderstood in lots and lots of directions.
Yeah. When I think saying explosive growth is an understatement when poker came out. Like it started going. Is that fair?
Well, it was more like rocket boosters of explosive growth. So we would find, the concept of social gaming and adding that to a social network, it added a new dimension that people could be social in this cocktail party. And that was the instinct I had out of Tribe. I thought, wow, I'm spending all this time on plumbing and community stuff and tools, but I wish I had the time to actually put fun stuff in the middle for them to do with each other. And I kind of thought a poker game is like an always on bar and kind of rowdy cocktail party. And the internet's always too quiet for me. And so I wanted something rowdy where you see people and hear them or chat with them. And now on Discord, you can hear them, I guess. But so I had that instinct. I created that with poker. It did catch on right away and got up to 400,000 daily active users and most importantly, that retained. Because a lot of apps were like, I call it sinking speedboat, that they were trying to drive faster before they sink.
Right.
And we were always focused on less on the virality and more on retention. Like how do we make the hole in the boat smaller? So we're very focused on like, how do we make something that people are going to want to stay in and have a social relationship to over time? Poker got to like 400,000 DAUs. We had a bunch of other games, word games. I made a version of Risk I called Attack. Actually won an award. This is the only time I ever won an award. I thought it was really good, but it failed. And we were at 400,000 DAUs and not really growing. And I made the conscious choice that let's double down on poker, on this franchise, and make it way better. And if we could double this to 800,000 DAUs, that's better than all the other games combined. And I had this realization that I think game companies miss, that they have one hit or success and then they try to go horizontally. They try to make more of that. When they had lightning in a bottle, they found something right that people loved. And people, you want a 10th season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. They just, I think, gave it to us. Or, Seinfeld. You don't want a first season of a new show, a new pilot. And people want the game they love to get deeper and better. They don't want more than they want you to try and market new games to them. And that was this realization that led to a lot. And so we really focused on poker and grew that to 800,000 DAUs. And by then, and then along the way in March of 2008, we turned on user pay, this idea of virtual goods. You could buy chips even though you couldn't do anything with them. And when we saw that work, we were like, okay, this is the beginning of something. This is going to be a whole industry. And then I was in this place of like, I want to be the most funded. Like I want to be the biggest macro bet on social gaming. So that's why, even though we were profitable all along, we kept raising more and more money, because we had to get way out ahead of it.
You wanted to take the oxygen out of the room.
No, it was less about competition and taking the oxygen out. It's like we want to just do as much and grow as much against this opportunity. The oxygen out of the room, we got to remember, is more of a red ocean than a blue ocean way of thinking to me. When it's a blue ocean and it's just going to grow to hundreds of millions of people or billions of people, it's a land grab. Maybe the land grab can sound like oxygen because we wanted, like, okay, there's going to be a social casino. There's going to be social crime genre, social sports, like every genre, social sims, every genre in gaming is going to be reinvented in a social mass market way. And so we wanted to have a studio going deep on that franchise.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you were riding the rocket fuel of Facebook at the time.
Yes.
Which was also growing like crazy.
Yes.
And had the built-in social components that you were working so hard to build.
Yes.
A tribe.
Yes.
Whereas in this case, you could just latch on the call it fun part of it, right? And then just take advantage of the social work that Facebook, the plumbing that they were doing at the time.
Yeah.
And their user base was just growing like crazy.
Yeah, that helped. And I like to think the instinct vein for me that I still have to this day, and is in my book, is that this is the cocktail party. And there's these cocktail party moments. Napster was a cocktail party. Friendster was a cocktail party. Facebook for a long, long time was the cocktail party. And then that party for most of us moved to Instagram. And I think for a lot of us, it's no longer Instagram. And now we're kind of like homeless. We don't have a clear cocktail party. For me, it's like on Twitter. But meaning it's the place that everyone's hanging out, and the people of interest to you are hanging out there, and you can engage with them, and that's fun and exciting, and it's lead gen, and it's fun, and it's all these things. Facebook was that cocktail party I'd been looking for, and I got to try to innovate beyond just trying to be the host and saying, well, maybe a jukebox, maybe fun games, maybe these other things will really make the cocktail party better for a lot of people. And there were these three foundational philosophies that I had for this mass market social gaming experience that I encapsulated when I started calling it .earth and Life at the Speed of Play. But the first one was that I still believe is making the virtual real. And sorry to be professorial, but this making the virtual real is adrenaline for everyone, adults, kids, meaning adults will give ourselves permission to play games if it feels like an adult activity, like gambling for money, poker with your friends. Even if you have a poker night with your friends, very few people would make it just for points. There has to be some $20 buy-in, something so that we feel like our decisions matter and there's more adrenaline around them. And so that was really deeply important. And the social with real identities gave us that virtual real. We went further with like Farmville, a game that was always on and persistent even when you weren't there. So believing the virtual is real was core. Then the next one we called Invest and Express. People call it UGC, but because you were being creative and investing in your farm or your city or your draw something, your game experience, and people you cared about were seeing it, it deeply mattered to you. And that's this Invest and Express loop is Instagram, it's Twitter, it's all social media. It's the more time you put into it or the more meaningful that post is, the more you care about who sees it in the comments. And, it's vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And then the third was persistence. And all of it kind of was heading towards the metaverse. Like the metaverse, I think will be all those things, but that's what we were trying to work against with our Zynga games, even though they looked like just silly, games. But we're trying to add all of that to this cocktail party, because the other thing, and I'm going to bigger points for me, is I think that ever since we got this smartphone, we've had this latent depression. I think that we walk around and we look at it. We have all these found moments. We know, all of us know that we could be way more productive than we are. And we look at our phone because I'm stuck in the airport, or I'm waiting for a call to start, or I'm on a boring call. And I look at my phone and I start out with hope. I'm like, okay, is there an important email or text or thing that is utility? No, because I looked at my phone 5 minutes ago and there wasn't then either. Okay, then what? Well, next we all have our thing we go down. Maybe I'm gonna check the news or stocks, but then you're gonna end up on social media, on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And even then you're trying to look for things that feel like they're of value to you and other people. And when you do, you're really, really excited and you're almost overtuned to it because you want that so badly. I just think we haven't kept up with Steve Jobs, like what he gave us. And I think our job as software service creators is to build out that digital life stack and to give people amazing things that they can do with their time. I mean, I think that's kind of it. And that's kind of what I was hoping to do with Zynga, is like, make it a good use of your time. Like, games are kind of empty calories along with all this other stuff, but Duolingo, chess.com, like there's some things that give us hope. They feel like at least I'm doing something that might matter in my real life in a positive way.
I think it's well said. When did you realize at Zynga that this wasn't your forever company?
You do hit those moments, and I did think it was my forever company, and I'd say things at company meetings like, the only way I'm leaving this company is like, my arms and legs facing up, or they're gonna carry me out of here. And I said, I bleed Zynga red, and I felt so deeply. I wanted this. It's like this. You want this like forever. As a founder, you dream of having that forever service and company and relationship that you can invest in like it's for decades. The way we do kind of, oddly, in having a life partner. I wanted a company as a life partner. I still do. I still dream of it and hope for it. When did I realize Zynga grew? You were starting to say it grew so much faster than I ever imagined. I mean, in 4 years, we got to 1 billion MAUs, 1 billion installs of our games, 300 million MAUs, $1 billion in bookings, 4,000 employees. I mean, Google grew to those things in like 8 years. And we got to a point that we were forced to go public. So it just got so big so quickly, we couldn't keep up with it. We couldn't keep the culture pace. And you have to reinvent your culture, your processes, all these things for stages of growth. But our stages of growth were happening in like 3 or 6 month increments, not 3 year increments. And it was really difficult. It gets away from you. And in some ways in a great way, but in a lot of ways, you're like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen and go that way. And then ultimately we were forced to go public. It was before the Obama Startup Act increased the number of shareholders. LinkedIn was forced, Facebook, us, and we didn't need to go public. We had over $1 billion in the bank. We didn't need capital. We didn't even have investors really clamoring for it. We were only a 4-year-old company. So we're forced to go public and really went public into what within 6 or 8 months became the most awkward time for us, because we went public just as like the wave was cresting. I mean, just as Facebook web was hitting its peak and they were kind of stumbling and trying to move to mobile. People forget about Spartan, but in the beginning, Facebook was a $20 stock before it was a $1 trillion stock because their mobile thing failed. We also were trying to make the move to mobile, and it wasn't working. We were too early. We were trading games that would do 500,000 a day in revenues for games that would at best do 50,000 a day. And we knew we had to go to mobile, but we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't move these flash games and audiences. So it was so awkward for us that this first business on the web is maturing, by Q2 of 2012. And then at that moment, Facebook changed their algorithm. I'm not a victim in this world, but we were kind of wiped off the earth by it. They changed their algorithm so that it had always been the games you played the most or apps you played the most. And so the navigation was all Zynga apps. It was Farmville and poker. And then they changed it to the games you installed most recently, which was none of our games. And we got wiped off the navigation and we lost 30% of our traffic in 2 days, missed our guidance, became a $2 stock, got sued by everyone. I went from being named Entrepreneur of the Year in the end of 2011 when we went public to being named one of the 5 worst CEOs in America by Fortune or Forbes, a year later. So it was a big turn, and I took it personally. I felt accountable. I think really good professional CEOs separate it from themselves, and they do a really good job of saying, hey, this thing happened, and we couldn't have known about it. Here's how we're navigating around. As a founder, I felt such a moral obligation to my co-founding team, to the employees, to investors. And I took it really personally. I held myself accountable for all of it. And it was real kind of, and I was kind of burned out after like 7 or 8 years. And it was 2011, I guess it was 4 or 5 years. And then by early 2013, I was like, wow, I'm not figuring this thing out, this mobile thing. And we were making headway, but Words with Friends, we had some things doing well. And so when John Doerr and Bing came to me and said, there's an opportunity to get like the top CEO candidate in the game industry, this guy, Don Matrick, who had turned around Xbox for Microsoft, I kind of was like, well, maybe I need to tap a new quarterback in the game. Like, I'm not doing it. Here's a guy who understands the game industry, is deeply respected. No one's going to get mad at me for replacing myself. And I think I went to this moment of wanting to make everyone around me happy more than thinking what was actually the exact right thing for the company and the business. And so I hired him, and I was like, the stock went up, and everyone thanked me for doing it, kind of like they're thanking Joe Biden for stepping aside. I was like, hey, I'm voluntarily stepping aside. Right. Everyone's like, thank God you're stepping aside. Right. And so Wall Street cheered it, and so that was the moment for me when I brought Matrick in. I said, okay, maybe this isn't my forever company, because the CEO he remade the company. He took our values down off the walls. It was kind of like a moment where the game industry said, see, we were right. Like, he represented the best of the game industry. He didn't come in, as I think any new CEO should, loving the existing DNA of the company. He didn't come in saying, I'm coming here because I admire so much about what's in place. It was more of the adult from the game industry coming in being like, let me teach you how this is supposed to happen.
Totally.
So
totally. And you kind of stepped aside, right? Right. Like you were still head of product?
Yeah. So I did step aside and let him be CEO and let him make decisions, lots of which were painful for me. I mean, my entire C staff left within, a year. But I stayed on as executive chairman. Well, I stayed on executive chairman, and I was going to focus on product, but then he said to me, look, I'll call you when I need you. So why don't you go kind of take a vacation? So I was like, okay. So I stopped doing anything really at the company. I'd have weekly check-ins with him or other people, and I still was kind of helping teams, but I was not in any kind of active operating role. That was from 2013 until for over a year. I was involved. I guess I was involved with big acquisitions and things like that. But it was not until the fall of 2014 that I kind of put my hand on the wheel.
Why'd you do that?
Well, you can only abdicate or delegate things so far. And at the end of the day, as a product maker, we're accountable to our end users. And I like to say, it doesn't matter if you micromanage what you do. Our job is to provide an amazing experience to our end users that they love. And rate highly, like in the App Store and things like that. And what happened in the fall of 2014 was, and this is something that happens in consumer product companies today, mostly that are not founder run. We delegate the most important job in the whole company often to the most junior person, which is putting out a new poker game. They decided to put out a Poker 2.0. That was decided by a director of product, maybe a GM, but our poker game was our original and most important franchise. That should be a board level decision. That should be a founder level decision. Like if you want to totally change this game that's one of your core franchises, or, I had this conversation with Jason Citron at Discord. Like they now have decided that the founders need to be the final decision on putting out any change to the user experience. I applaud that. Like this is the most important decision Discord could make, is their user experience. So they put out a Poker 2.0. There was a revolt. Our users hated it. It was buggy. It totally changed the user experience. It didn't do proven better new against us. It just was new. And they kind of quoted Steve Jobs, and they're like, well, we can't just listen to our users. We got to give them kind of what they need, not what they want. Or it's people invoke Steve Jobs, around their decisions, even if they're bad. And I said, no, we got to listen to our players. And I said, at a minimum, I'm deciding as executive chairman that we're going to keep old poker and call it Poker Classic. So we had 2 games in the App Store, Poker Classic and New Poker. And Poker Classic was crushing New Poker. It was more revenues, more users. And it was like a thorn in the CEO's side and the team's side because I had, as I guess,
overridden.
I overrode them. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of, that trusted relationship for me, with that CEO. But I felt like I had to do it,
How long were you not in the CEO seat?
He started in July of 2013, and I came back in the CEO as April in 2015. Okay. So it was almost 2 years.
And when you came back, was it a homecoming for you? Like, what was that like?
It was like diving into the fire. I mean, it was contentious because we had a board meeting in like January of 2015. Matrick, and I don't blame him on this front, but Matrick said to Dor and the board, he's like, we can't have 2 CEOs, and Mark's trying to grab the wheel, and he's second guessing me, and he framed it being kind of the adult in collared shirts, and I'm in a t-shirt and don't always come off as an adult. I'm the wacky founder, but he framed it as Mark's having a midlife crisis, and Mark is trying to grab the wheel and trying to run this company because he doesn't know what else he wants to do. And it's not true. I actually had built an incubator called Super Labs, and I was building my .earth product. Kleiner was actually going to fund it through Bing. So I was actually happy and doing fun stuff, but this is your child, and I couldn't let it die. And I saw that it was going to go off a cliff. He was betting the whole company on a slate of new games that were unproven. They weren't doing proven better new. It was just really high fidelity games. And all of our franchises were withering, and they were projecting them all to decline. And I'm like, why would they decline? Well, the app ratings are low and people are over them. All of the metrics were low. And I said, no, they're low because we're not supporting them, and we're betting the whole company. We're going to end up losing a lot of money. And finally, the CFO agreed with me and came to me and the board and said he actually agreed that the company was really going to be in a trouble place. We had an emergency board meeting at Kleiner on a Sunday, and I presented all this stuff. And the board said, okay, Mark, fine, you can come back as CEO. And John Doerr said, you need to take $1 and pay so people see. And I sold my Super Labs into the company for $1. So I lost some, real money on that. So you kind of put your needs second, but you also, no one appreciates it or thanks you. But it's your child, you've got to do it to make sure that it lives and thrives. I came back in my first 8 weeks. We closed half the global studios, shut down more than half the games, laid off 20% of the workforce, closed all the data centers. We cut a couple $100 million in OpEx, and I think we saved the company. I refocused everyone on the core franchises and our app ratings. I took over product roadmap meetings with every franchise team every week. And I started and ended every meeting by asking, what will our players thank us for? My friend Marcus Siegel came back, put that big neon sign on the wall, said, what will our players thank us for? And that was the mantra of the turnaround. We said, we're going to come back and win back their trust. We're going to focus on quality, app ratings. And we did. And all of our metrics started to improve once we focused on quality. And then we came back to testing and going after bold beats and things that were kind of big positive disruptions of the experience. Words with Friends, when I came in, was projected to decline from the next year. It was supposed to go from like 130 million in revenues to 79 million in revenues. And so for that reason, they were pulling teams off. They were going to move it to India. And I said, Words with Friends is going to be, and poker are going to be where we fight this fight. We're going to save those franchises. And instead of 79 million in revenues the next year in 2016, Words with Friends did like 180 million in revenues and made 100 million in EBITDA. So 100 million in contribution.
Wow.
And that's the kind of economics that you get in a long-term franchise. So I'm proud of what I did then. It was not really, Wall Street didn't like me. They didn't like that I came back in. I bought back something like $800 million of stock at $220 a share. I think I did things Wall Street would like. They just didn't know that I was actually their friend. And then late in that year, Bing brought his friend Frank Gibeau in, who had left EA and was a kindred spirit to me. He actually loved products and wanted to get in the details of products. And he sat in on he joined our board, sat in on some of our meetings. And I really liked his judgment and his care about products. And he loved Zynga's PMing and data analytics. So unlike Matrick, I had a CEO who now wanted to go after the Zynga stack and rebuild that. And so by March of 2016, I handed the reins to Frank. It had already, by the time Matrick came in, it was no longer really my company. It had lost our original DNA, and maybe I could have gone back to that moment in time.
You just didn't feel the spark like you used to.
Well, we were trying. It was kind of like, there was a moment where Yahoo was like even with Google in search and portal, and then they fell from grace, and then they were never going to be Google again.
Yep.
And we were kind of like that. I think we were like the Google of games. And then after we fell, and maybe people at Zynga don't want to hear this now, but I think after we fell, after that moment, I just think we ended up in a place that was a lot more mediocre. We were trying to put points on the board. We weren't trying to go back after our vision and our mission of connecting the world through games. We weren't trying to innovate on social game mechanics. We were trying to find good categories. And what Frank and team did was A+. Like, they went and acquired a whole bunch of companies with forever franchises. The economics of a forever franchise were not well understood by Wall Street, that they last far longer, they're far more profitable. And, they brought the company back to impressive revenue growth and EBITDA and sold the company for almost $10 a share to Take-Two. Like, they did a great A+ job.
Which was like 13 billion or something.
Yeah. But we weren't going after social gaming.
Right.
We were no longer going to try to be the Google of games, which is a much riskier place. And I said it in this motion of mediocrity. First, when I brought in a different CEO, but then even when I came back as CEO, I was playing defense. I was trying to do a turnaround. I was trying to save our franchises. I wasn't playing offense the way we were before. I wasn't trying to drive major innovation.
Totally.
So,
what's the taste in your mouth now?
It's fine. I don't have. There's nothing bitter. It was such an amazing experience. I worked with such amazing people. I'm proud of the whole body of work. But, I got close to being in this place to be able to really drive innovation at scale against something that mattered. And I loved it and got the taste for it. And I, deeply want to get back to that.
I cannot wait to see what kind of sparks the sticks create.
Yeah. And I'm in the abyss. I really, the only way you can get out of the abyss is by taking small steps and working against things that, that might turn into more, getting in front of a wave, hoping the wave comes. So who knows? Maybe I'll be rubbing sticks together and, it won't lead to anything. I enjoy rubbing sticks together. I just enjoy it a lot more when it's start a fire.
Yeah. How long has it been?
Well, I stopped being executive chairman, I don't remember, maybe in 2018 or 19. And then they sold the company in 2022. So it's been a while. And I went through really playing around with blockchain before I came to the conclusion that blockchain was not a consumer platform other than for day trading. Luckily, I didn't launch anything, but I built a lot. So I've been building a lot of stuff, but nothing, good enough to release. Although I think I am going to actually release some shots on goal like by this fall.
I can't wait to see. Are you bold enough to buy another office in San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Are you serious?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
So it feels like we're on the edge of a real shot here.
Yeah. No,
You're going to do it again.
Oh yeah.
You're going to buy an office before the sparks have actually.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I own.
Man, I respect that.
I own two other buildings. The original Zynga building, not the headquarters, which we sold, but I have this building that we started in on Vermont Street, but it's just so basic and trash that, it's not at this point where I want to
you don't want to work there.
No, look at your offices. If I want to try to live better than Kleiner, the bar is raised. You guys keep raising the bar.
Well, if we do, it's on the backs of folks like you that we get to partner with that are doing the heavy lifting. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, can we do this again in a year once the sparks have created something?
Yeah, I hope that I'm here talking about something that I'm either embarrassed to talk about or it's
either way, even if it doesn't create something and it's just embarrassment. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully I went deep on grit, right? That's the point.
You absolutely did. I end all these the same. When you hear the word, what do you think of?
Grit to me comes down to a commitment to an outcome. Grit is no excuses. I am committing, I'm going to get there. And I think when you look at why certain founders have a higher hit rate, I think it is because of grit. It's because they are committed to getting there, to taking that hill, whichever way that path is, and doing lots of disruptive, unpopular things. And and the book I love that I'd recommend to your listeners is hard to hear, but it's great. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked. I don't know if you've, Stuart Butterfield recommended that book to me years ago. And if you really want to be a super successful and you're really ambitious as a founder, you've got to have the courage to be disliked by your peers, your investors, your board, your team. If you're more committed, Jeff Bezos talks about the number one skill to be at his C staff was you had to be right. It had to be a lot of other things, but the number one is you have to be right. And grit to me is about being committed to being right, to true signal, to winning, and being willing to be on a path that is probably going to be disruptive and unpopular to get there. And it's unfortunately not making, your VCs like Kleiner like you. It's not about being liked. It's about about winning.
Mark Pincus, thank you.
Thanks.